My wife secretly sold our family home for $350, $0 to pay off her gambling debts, then forged my signature to buy a new place, and now she's threatening to take everything, including our inheritance, unless I drop the lawsuit. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing about how my wife, Lisa, turned out to be the biggest betrayal of my life. You think you know someone, right? You trust them with everything, your money, your future, your very soul, and then one day everything falls apart in a way you never saw coming. The craziest part, it all started subtly like a slow leak in a boat. At first I just noticed little things, missing cash here, late nights there, her phone buzzing more than usual, but I didn't want to believe it. I kept telling myself she was stressed, busy, maybe having a rough patch. We had been married for 10 years. I'm Mark, by the way, and Lisa is. Well, she's always been the type to be a little bitchy when she didn't get her way, but I thought that was just her personality. She's gorgeous, always dressed to kill, with that sharp, calculating look in her eyes. She's the kind of woman who can make anyone bow down, and I admit I fell for her hard. She was the life of every party, always the center of attention, and somehow she made me feel like I was the luckiest guy alive. But then I started noticing things that didn't add up. It all started about 6 months ago. I'd come home from work and she'd be on her phone, hiding the screen when I walked in. She'd brush it off, say she was checking emails or texting a friend. But then I saw her deleting messages, and her excuses got more and more ridiculous. She'd say she was talking to her sister but I had a feeling she was hiding something. She started canceling plans, claiming she was busy, but I'd find out she was out late, sometimes with a guy I'd never seen before. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but I knew something was off. One day I decided to follow her. I know, stupid move, but I needed to know. I parked a block away and watched her go into a fancy hotel downtown. She stayed there for hours with some guy I didn't recognize. When she finally came out, she looked flushed, happy, like she just had the best sex of her life. That was the moment I knew. My wife was cheating on me. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. It wasn't just the betrayal, I felt stupid, naive, like I'd missed all the signs. And the worst part, she lied to my face about everything. When I confronted her that night, she looked at me with that icy smile and said, "You're overreacting, Mark. You're paranoid. It's just sex, for God's sake, it doesn't mean anything." She told me I was imagining things, that I was insecure, that I was jealous, but I knew better. I saw her texting late at night, heard her giggling on the phone when she thought I wasn't listening. She was cheating, no question about it, and I was furious. But what really broke me was the way she lied. She spun stories, made me doubt myself. She said I was crazy for suspecting her, that I was controlling. Meanwhile, she was out there, sneaking around, doing God knows what. It's like she had this double life, one where she was my perfect wife, and another where she was living a secret, reckless existence. And the worst, I found out she'd been selling our family home, our biggest investment, to pay off her gambling debts. She'd secretly sold the house for $350, $0, then forged my signature to buy a new place, all behind my back. I was stunned. That house was our future, our security, and she just sold it without telling me. Then she used the money to cover her debts, and when I finally discovered the truth, she threatened me, saying she'd take everything, our inheritance, the new house, everything, if I didn't drop the lawsuit. I felt like I'd been hit with a tidal wave. My world was crashing down. How could she do this? How could she lie and cheat and then threaten me with everything I loved? I was angry, hurt, betrayed, but mostly I was lost. I didn't know what to do next. After I uncovered all of that, I honestly didn't know where to turn. Part of me wanted to explode, to scream at her, to throw her out of the house and never look back. But I knew that wasn't the smart move. I needed to think, to plan. Because Lisa wasn't just some careless wife cheating on me, she was a criminal in her own right, selling our home, forging my signature, threatening to take everything. And I realized that if I didn't act fast, I'd lose everything I worked for. So I started digging deeper. I hired a private investigator, someone I found through a friend. It wasn't cheap, but I needed the truth. Over the next few weeks, I watched her every move. Turns out she'd been funneling money into some shady online gambling sites, big ones, and losing thousands every week. I found bank statements hidden in her email drafts, wire transfers to accounts I'd never seen before. It was clear her debts weren't just a problem, they were a disaster waiting to explode. Meanwhile, I was trying to keep a brave face. I confronted her again, this time with the evidence in hand. I laid out everything: her affair, her gambling, the sale of the house, the forged signature, her reaction. She shot me a look that was pure contempt. "You're overreacting, Mark," she snapped. "All of that is just your paranoia. You're jealous, insecure, and honestly, I don't know why I married someone so controlling." She told me I was just jealous because she was more fun than I am, that she needed space, that I was suffocating her. I felt sick listening to her lie so effortlessly, like she was a different person from the woman I had loved for a decade. But the worst part was how she spun everything. She said she was doing this for us, that her debts were just a temporary problem, and that I should be grateful she was trying to fix things instead of leaving her. She kept insisting I was the one at fault for not trusting her, that I was paranoid because I'd been controlling her. I wanted to scream at her, to tell her she was the biggest liar I'd ever met, but I kept my cool. I knew that if I lost my temper, I'd lose control of the situation. Deep inside, I was hurting so badly I didn't know what to do. I'd trusted her with everything: our money, our future, our lives, and she'd betrayed me so completely. I thought about all the nights I stayed up worrying, all the times I brushed off her strange behavior, all the moments I told myself she was just stressed or tired. Turns out she was lying to my face all along. I'd been blind. And now I was faced with the reality that she'd been secretly planning to take everything I cared about, including our inheritance, unless I caved. The thing that cut the deepest: the fact that she threatened me with legal action if I didn't drop the lawsuit. She said she'd fight me for everything: our house, our savings, the inheritance that was supposed to be for our children someday. I felt like I was in a nightmare. I had to decide whether to fight her, to expose her lies, or to let her walk all over me just to keep the peace. But I knew I couldn't let her get away with it. I had to stand up, even if it meant tearing my life apart. And so I started planning my next move. I contacted a lawyer, one who specialized in fraud and marital disputes. I was determined to take her to court, to get back what was stolen, and to stop her from ruining everything. But I also knew that any fight with Lisa would come with fallout. She was ruthless, manipulative, and she wouldn't go down without a fight. Still, I couldn't let her win. Not after everything. Not after she'd lied, cheated, and tried to steal my future. I was furious, but I was also scared, because I knew this was just the beginning of a war I wasn't ready for. The more I uncovered, the clearer it became that Lisa wasn't just a cheating wife. She was a woman on the edge, spiraling into a mess of lies and deceit that threatened to destroy everything I built. I started to see how deep her manipulations went. She'd been planning this for months: selling the house behind my back, forging my signature, racking up gambling debts, and then turning around to threaten me when I finally caught on. The betrayal cut so deep I couldn't sleep at night, and I could feel my blood boiling every time I thought about the lies she told me to cover her tracks. I decided I had to confront her directly, face to face. I arranged a meeting at our house, my house, the one she'd secretly sold, and told her I knew everything. Her reaction was classic Lisa, flipping her hair, rolling her eyes, and acting like I was overreacting. She said, "Mark, you're making this all up. You're paranoid, jealous, insecure. I don't know what you're even talking about." But I had the evidence: bank statements, wire transfers, forged signatures. I threw it all on the table and watched her falter for the first time. She looked furious, then suddenly very calm. "You're just jealous because I found someone else," she shot at me. "You're boring, Mark. You don't satisfy me anymore. Maybe it's time you face the truth. You're not enough for me." That hit me like a punch in the gut. I couldn't believe she was throwing that in my face after everything. I felt the rage boil up. I wanted to scream, to shake her, but I kept my voice steady. "You've been cheating, gambling, lying, and selling our house. You're done, Lisa. I'm taking you to court for everything. I want my money back, and I want out of this nightmare." She sneered, "Good luck with that, Mark. I'll see you in court. But don't think you're getting away with anything. I know all your secrets, too." Her words sent a shiver down my spine. I realized she was dangerous, more than just a liar. She was manipulative and vindictive. She'd burn everything down just to save herself. Still, I stood my ground. I told her I'd fight her for the house, the inheritance, everything she'd stolen. I had to protect what was left of our life, even if it meant going to war. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing, trying to process how my wife had become this person, this stranger who lied, cheated, and threatened to ruin me. I kept thinking about the home we built, the memories, the future I thought we had. All of it was crumbling fast. I felt so betrayed, so angry, and yet there was a part of me that felt broken, like I'd lost the person I loved most in the world. I'd trusted her blindly for years, and now I wasn't sure I knew her at all. I started making calls to lawyers, gathering all the evidence I could find. I wanted to be prepared. I knew Lisa wouldn't go quietly. She'd fight dirty, lie even more, do whatever it took to keep what she stole. I had to be ready for that. I also reached out to some friends for support, people who knew her, knew us, and tried to figure out what I should do next. The hardest part was knowing that no matter what I did, I'd never get back that sense of trust I once had. That feeling of being safe in my own marriage was gone. Now, all I had was a plan to fight back, to get justice, and to stop her from destroying what was left of our life together. I never thought I'd be in a situation like this, fighting my wife in court, trying to save what's left of my home and my dignity. But I knew I couldn't let her win, not after everything. The betrayal was too deep, the lies too many. I had to stand up for myself, for what was right, even if it meant tearing everything apart. I just hoped I was doing the right thing because deep down I was terrified of what was coming next. The more I dug into her lies, the more I realized how far gone Lisa was. Every new document I uncovered painted a clearer picture of her desperation and reckless behavior. The forged signatures, the hidden bank accounts, the secret wire transfers. She'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. It was like unraveling a web of deceit that she'd spun so carefully I almost didn't see the threads. But I saw them now, and what I saw terrified me. I decided I had to act fast. I contacted a lawyer who specialized in property fraud and marital disputes. We went over all the evidence I'd collected. I told him everything about the sale of the house, her gambling debts, the forged signature, her threats. He told me I had a strong case, but it would be messy. Lisa wasn't just going to roll over, she'd fight dirty. She'd lie, manipulate, do whatever it took to keep what she'd stolen. That's when I realized I had to prepare for a legal war, and I couldn't do it alone. I started gathering more proof, texts, emails, witnesses who saw her with the other guy, her gambling statements. I wanted everything documented. I also reached out to a private investigator again to keep tabs on her. Meanwhile, I kept my emotions in check. Every time I thought about her lying to my face, I felt a surge of anger. Every time I saw her smirk or deny everything, I felt like punching a wall, but I knew I had to stay calm. I couldn't let her see how much she was breaking me. One night I confronted her again. I told her I knew everything about the house, the debts, the affair. I told her I was filing for divorce and taking her to court. Her reaction was bizarre. She looked at me like I was a fool, then suddenly burst into tears. "You don't understand, Mark," she sobbed. "I was just trying to fix everything. I did everything for us. You're just too blind to see it." That was her excuse. She was doing it all for us, for the family. She claimed she loved me, that she was stressed out, and that I was overreacting. I couldn't believe her. After all she'd done, after all the lies, I felt a mixture of disgust and pity. Pity because I knew she was spiraling, and disgust because she was so good at lying. I told her I was done listening. I was going to the authorities, the courts, and I was going to get justice for what she'd stolen. I explained that I was just after her money, I was after the truth. I wanted her to face the consequences of her actions. That night, I felt a strange mixture of relief and dread. Relief that I was finally taking control, and dread because I knew this was just the beginning of a long, bloody battle. Over the next few days, I kept gathering evidence, talking to my lawyer, and preparing for court. I also made the difficult decision to move out of the house temporarily. I couldn't stay there knowing what she'd done, knowing how she'd betrayed everything we once stood for. So I rented a small apartment nearby, just enough to get some space and clear my head. It hurt so much to leave what was supposed to be my home, but I couldn't risk her destroying it all. I kept thinking about the future, what I'd do with the inheritance, how I'd rebuild my life from this mess. Honestly, I felt like I was walking through a nightmare, but I knew I had to keep going. The hardest part was the emotional toll. Every day I felt like I was losing a piece of myself, my trust, my stability, my sense of security. I kept replaying the moments I realized she was lying, the nights I stayed awake wondering if I'd ever be able to trust anyone again. I was angry at myself for missing the signs, angry at her for doing this, and scared of what the court proceedings would bring. But beneath all that anger, there was a stubborn part of me that refused to give up. I was going to fight for what was right, for what was left of my dignity. I knew that in the end I had to hold on to hope that someday I'd come out of this stronger, even if right now I felt like I was drowning. The court date was set, and I knew this was the moment everything would come to a head. I'd spent weeks preparing, collecting every piece of evidence, lining up witnesses, and making sure my legal team had everything they needed. Lisa, of course, was doing her best to spin her lies, claiming she was the victim and that I was just jealous and paranoid. She even tried to play the victim card in court, sobbing about how stressed she was and how she only did what she had to do for the sake of the family. It was pathetic, really, but I kept my composure. I knew her game. When the day finally arrived, I sat in that courtroom feeling like I was in a nightmare. I saw her sitting there looking confident like she had already won. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it. My lawyer laid out all the evidence, proof of the house sale, the forged signature, her gambling debts, and the affair. I was nervous but focused. I told the court everything I knew, how she'd betrayed me and our family, how she'd lied and manipulated her way into stealing our future. Lisa's reaction was classic. She tried to deny everything, but the evidence was overwhelming. She threw out random excuses, blaming her gambling on stress, claiming the affair was just a fling, and insisting she only did everything for us. But the judge wasn't buying it. He looked directly at her and said, "Mrs. Smith, your actions are reckless and deceitful. Selling your husband's property without his knowledge, forging his signature, and betraying your vows are serious offenses. This court will consider all of this in its ruling." I felt a mix of relief and exhaustion. After the court session, the judge ordered her to pay back the money from the house sale, to return the forged documents, and to cease all legal threats against me. It was a start, but I knew the fight wasn't over yet. She was furious, her face red with rage, and she kept yelling as she was led out of the courtroom. I watched her go, feeling a strange sense of victory mixed with dread, because I knew she wouldn't go quietly. She had too much to lose, and I was sure she'd keep fighting. In the aftermath, I started to rebuild my life. The court's ruling meant I would get most of our inheritance back, and I could finally start putting the pieces together. But I also knew I'd have to be vigilant. Lisa was dangerous when cornered, and I didn't trust she'd accept defeat easily. I changed all my passwords, cut off her access to our bank accounts, and hired a security system for my new place. I didn't want her showing up unannounced, trying to manipulate or threaten me again. The emotional toll was still heavy. I'd gone through so much: betrayal, heartbreak, anger, and I wondered if I'd ever really recover. But I also learned a lot about trust, about the importance of protecting myself, and about the fact that some people are just capable of incredible betrayal. I realized I'd been naive, but I also knew I had to forgive myself for trusting her for so long. Moving forward, I promised myself I'd be more cautious, more aware. I'd never let someone like Lisa get that close again. Looking back now, I see how much I've grown through this chaos. I lost a lot, but I also gained clarity. The biggest lesson: never ignore the signs, no matter how much you love someone. And if you ever find yourself in a situation where your partner is lying, stealing, and betraying everything you stand for, stand up for yourself. Fight for what's right, because at the end of the day, your integrity and sanity are what matter most. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know I'll never let someone manipulate me like that again. And I hope anyone reading this learns from my pain. Trust your instincts, protect yourself, and never settle for less than honesty. Looking back, I realize how close I was to losing everything. My home, my money, my sanity. The betrayal cut so deep I sometimes wonder how I managed to pick myself up and keep fighting. Lisa's lies had wrapped around me like a noose, and for a while I was suffocating in the chaos she created. But somehow, I found the strength to stand firm. I learned that trust, once broken this badly, isn't easily repaired, and that sometimes the only way forward is to cut your losses and rebuild from scratch. The biggest lesson I took away from this nightmare is that no matter how much you love someone, you have to protect yourself. I became more cautious, more aware. I learned not to ignore the signs, small things like secretive phone calls, late nights, unexplained withdrawals. Because those little things add up, and if you don't pay attention, they can destroy your entire life. I also realized that it's okay to walk away from someone who's willing to betray everything you stand for. Sometimes love isn't enough to fix a relationship that's rotten at its core. Now I'm in a different place, still healing, still rebuilding. I've moved into a new apartment, started focusing on my career, and, most importantly, I've begun to trust myself again. I've learned that the pain of betrayal fades with time, but the lessons it teaches stay with you forever. I don't harbor hatred for Lisa anymore. I just feel sorry for her. Sorry that she let her greed, her lies, and her reckless behavior destroy what should have been a happy life. If I could give anyone advice from my experience, it's this: never ignore your instincts. If something feels off, dig deeper. Protect your assets, your heart, and your peace of mind. And if you find yourself dealing with a partner who's lying, cheating, or stealing, stand up for yourself. Fight for your dignity, even if it costs you everything. Because in the end, the only thing that matters is your integrity and your ability to look in the mirror and say you did what was right. This whole ordeal changed me, no doubt about it. I'm more cautious now, yes, but I'm also more resilient. I've learned that betrayal doesn't define me, and that sometimes the only way to find peace is to walk away from what's broken and start anew. I hope anyone reading this who's going through something similar finds the strength to do the same. Because trust me, you're stronger than you think, strong enough to survive the worst and brave enough to rebuild what's been lost.